Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 30 of our Golang course. In this lesson, we are going to learn about the multifunctional for loop in Go. So let's get started. In programming, loops are control structures that allow a block of code to be executed repeatedly. This is useful when you want to perform a certain operation multiple times without having to write the same code over and over again. In programming, loops are very common. If you have worked with different languages, you have probably already seen the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop. A for loop is used to execute a block of code as long as a specific condition is true. It is particularly useful when the number of iterations are known beforehand. A while loop also executes a block of code as long as a specific condition is true. However, unlike the for loop, it may not have a predetermined number of iterations. The do-while loop is similar to the while loop, but it guarantees at least one execution of the block of code because the condition is evaluated after the code block. In Go programming, there's only one type of loop available, which is the for loop. The for loop in Go is flexible and powerful as it can be used to implement all types of loop, including the while and the do-while loops. We will see how this can be accomplished with examples. There are three kinds of for loops in Go, that is, the for loop with condition only, the for loop with the clause or the for clause, which is the most common type of for loop in programming. The third is a for loop with the range clause. Let us now look at them one by one. First, we have for loop with condition. In this type of for loop, there is a condition specified after the for keyword. Once the loop is entered, the condition is checked. If it evaluates to true, the loop body is executed. Afterward, the condition is checked again. This process repeats until the condition evaluates to false. If the condition never becomes false, the loop will continue indefinitely. It is also known as an infinite for loop. If the condition for the for loop is omitted entirely, it is equivalent to having condition as true. This means loop will continue indefinitely, again resulting in what's known as infinite loop. The break statement is a control flow statement that allows you to exit a loop prematurely. When encountered, it immediately terminates the loop and continues with the next statement after the loop. This is extremely useful for exiting an infinite loop or stopping the loop based on a certain condition. Now let's look at each kind of for loop one by one. First is the for loop with condition. As you can see, the syntax here is for keyword followed by the condition and then the block of code that you want to execute. Let's now look at it with an example. Here I have a variable a with value 10. You can see for keyword is followed by a condition which is a greater than 0. Inside the for loop, I am doing fmt println a. The for loop will execute as long as this condition is true, which in current case will always be true, which will result in an infinite loop. This is not something we want, so after printing the value of a, we are going to reduce it by 1. Now let's run our program and see what we get. As you can see, the first value was 10, that is a is equal to 10 fmt println a. Then we reduce the value to 9, so at this point the value is 9. It checks again, 9 is greater than 0, so the block of code is executed. Then we get 9 printed. Now at this point the value of a is 9, reduce 1 and we have 8. The condition is checked again and it is greater than 0, so the loop body is executed again. As you can see, in the last print statement, we have a as 1. So it printed 1 and then a minus minus, which is a becomes 0, which makes this condition as false. So no further loops are executed and we exit out of the program. So that's how the for loop with condition works. What happens if I omit this condition? Let's run our program and see. As you can see, the for loop is continuing to execute. So I have to Control C to execute out of it. That's because the condition is always true, which makes it run forever. To exit for loop, you can also use the break statement. So we can say if a is equal to 0, then we are going to break out of the loop. What the break statement does is, it will break out of the loop that it resides in. So in this case, the for loop that it resides in. We will start with value of a is equal to 10. And then decrease the value and keep on going until the value becomes 0. When the value becomes 0, this statement becomes true and we will break out of the loop. Let's run our program and see the output. As you can see, it is same as what we got in the previous run. That is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, so on till 1 printed. So when we reach a is equal to 0, we break out of the loop. Break statement is something that we use to prematurely exit out of the loop. If we didn't have a break statement here, it will continue executing as we saw earlier. For loop. Next, we will look at the for loop with the for clause. This form of the for loop being described is a widely recognized and commonly used structure found in almost all programming languages that support loops. It's considered a standard way of writing a for loop. This kind of for loop has three parts. They are separated by semicolon. The first part is called initialization. This is where you set an initial value condition or a variable that will be used in the loop. It's executed once at the beginning of the loop. Next part is the condition. This is a Boolean expression that is checked before each iteration of the loop. If it evaluates to true, the loop continues. If it evaluates to false, the loop terminates. And the third part is the post statement. This is a statement or operation that is executed after each iteration of the loop. It typically involves updating the variable or performing other operations. In Go, any of these three parts can be left empty, which emphasizes the flexibility of for loop in Go. Here, we have the syntax of for loop with a for clause. So, the first part is the initialization statement followed by a semicolon. Then we have the conditional check that is performed every time before executing the for loop followed by a semicolon. And then the post statement, which is executed every time after the code in the code block has been executed. Let's now look at an example for the same. As you can see, this is the syntax for the for loop with the for clause. First, we initialize a variable I with a value 0. Then we have a condition to run the for loop until I is less than 10, and the post statement increment the value of I by 1. Inside, I'm just going to do OFMT println I. So what happens here is, we start the for loop with I is equal to 0. This is the only time this statement is called. Next, we check if I is less than 10, which is true. So we execute this statement. After executing this statement, the post statement is executed, that is I++, which makes the value of I equal to 1. So now the value of I is 1. Next, it goes here. Again, 1 is less than 10, so the loop code block is executed. Again, the value will be increased by 1. Now 1 is 2. Again, this statement is true, so this is executed. And so on until we reach a loop iteration where I is equal to 10, which makes this statement evaluate to false. And as such, we exit out of the for loop. Let's run our program to verify the same. As you can see, we started with a 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until 9. Because we want everything printed that's less than 10. So this is how a for loop with a for clause works. Next, we will look at for loop with the range clause. This type of loop is designed to iterate over the elements of various data structures like arrays, slices, strings, maps, channels, as well as any drive type that are built upon these composite structures. You will see use of for range a lot in Go code. For arrays, slices, strings, and map, it provides two iteration variable. Iteration variable is something that's only valid inside the for loop. The first variable receives the index or key in case of maps, and the second iteration variable receives the value of the corresponding value. In case of channels that are used for concurrent programming, it only provides a single iteration variable which receives the value from the channels. Channels again are a communication mechanism in Go, and they don't have indices like arrays or slices. We will cover channels in more advanced lessons of this course. This is how a typical for range loop will look. If X is an array or a slice, this will be the index and this will be the value stored at that index. If X is a map, this will be the key and this will be the value. We will study each of them in the following slides. Now let us look at how for range works. So to demo how a for range loop works, I'm just going to create a slice of int values. As you can see here, A is an int slice with values 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can iterate through all the values using the for range loop. This is the syntax for a for range loop. We say for index, comma value, colon equal range A. So here, as you can see, I'm doing a fmt printf, and inside the printf statement, I'm printing the value of index and the value stored at that index. These two, index and value, are iteration variables. The scope of these variables is inside the for loop only. If I try to access index outside the for loop, I will get error undefined. If we run our program, we should see index with the value printed for the slice A. It says index 0 value is 1, index 1 value is 2, and so on. We are going to modify here to make sure that it is printing the correct values. And here, as you can see, it correctly outputted the value stored at index 2 as 100. So this is basically how you use a for range loop. We can also update A to be an array. If we run a program, it should run fine. As we expected, we see the values same as the previous run. So this is basically how the for range loop works. As we saw in the example, when you use the range with an array or slice, it sets up the loop that iterates through each element of the array or a slice. In each iteration, the first variable, often referred to as the index variable, will receive the index of the current element, and the second variable will receive the actual value of that element. When you use range with a string in Go, it iterates over the Unicode code points within that string. In Go, strings are UTF-8 encoded, so a single character can be composed of one or more bytes. This is useful when you need to work with multi-byte characters, which are common in Unicode. For a string, the first value represents the index of a starting byte, and the second value corresponds to the rune value for the Unicode character. Let us see with an example now. So here, as you can see, I have a string with Unicode characters. Let's try to print every character in the string with the for range loop. So we can do for index rune value is equal to colon equal range A, which is a string that has Unicode characters. Inside it, we can do fmt printf index and rune value, and then provide the index and the rune value. Now let's run our code and see what we get. The first value it gave was the index of the starting byte for the rune or the Unicode code point. So in case of the first character, the byte resides at index 0, and for the second one, it resides at index 3. So we can say the first character in the string is taking 3 bytes. If we had a single string, for example ABC, where each character covers a single byte, we will get index 0, 1, 2 printed along with the rune values or the character values. Go run main.go, and as you can see, value A resides at index 0, value B resides at index 1, and value C resides at index 2. I'm just going to revert this. So that's another way of correctly running through each character of a string when we are using Unicode strings. You can use the for range loop along with the string where the first value is index of the starting byte for the Unicode code point, and then next value is the actual rune value stored for that code point. Next, let us look at how for range works with maps. In a map, you can use the for range loop to iterate over its key value pairs. When you do this, the first variable receives the value for the key, and the second variable receives the associated value with that key. Unlike array and slices, the order of iteration in a map is not defined. Maps use a hash-based data structure which doesn't have a fixed order. This means you will get the key value pairs in a different order each time you iterate over a map. This is something that you need to keep in mind when you are iterating with for range over a map. Another thing to keep in mind is if you add or delete elements from a map while iterating over it, the behavior is not guaranteed. Some newly added or deleted elements may be observed while others might not. This is because the internal structure of a map may change during the iteration, which is also linked to the fact that Go doesn't iterate over maps in a fixed manner every time you loop over it. Let's look at an example. I'm just going to remove it, and I'm going to create a map ages with map of key string and value int. Inside, I'm going to say Alice is 30 and Bob is 35. We are going to use for range to iterate over the map. For name, age, colon equal range ages, fmt printf. So as you can see here, I am doing fmt printf, printing the value of age for a given name. The first variable when we do a for range with map is again the key, which is in this case Alice and Bob, and the age will be whatever value is stored for that key, which is 30 and 35. Let's run our program to see what we get. As you can see, it correctly printed Alice is 30, Bob is 35 years old. Again, Alice is the key and 30 is the value. I had to try a couple of times, but as you can see, the order of iteration is not always granted, and after trying a couple of times, I was able to get it printed in the reverse manner. That is, the value for Bob key was printed before the Alice key. In this lesson, first we looked at the multifunctional for loop. First we looked at for with condition, where you can start a for loop just with a condition, and the code block will be executed as long as the condition is true. Next, we looked at for with the for clause, which is the standard way of iterating using the for loop. It had three parts. First is initialization, second is the conditional check, and third is the post statement, which is executed after each iteration of the loop. Then we looked at for with range clause. We covered for range with arrays and slices along with strings and maps. We also saw that for range is very useful when iterating over array slices, maps and strings. It allows you to iterate over the array slices and provides you the value for index and the value stored at that index for array and slices, and in case of maps, it provides you the key values stored in a map. For string, it was very useful since it provides the first byte of the rune or the Unicode code point stored inside the string, and the next is the actual Unicode code point stored in the string, which is very useful when working with strings that have Unicode characters. That's it for the lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to ask any questions you have. You can comment under the video or reach out to our Discord server. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Happy coding.